Welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming back to Steve and Carrie's Holistic Buffet. Hello, partner.
Hello, partner. So today's episode all about boundaries. And I feel that, Carrie, this is an area that you've been doing a lot of research and work on in your own life and also professionally. What's your definition of what boundaries are and why they're important?
Oh, good question, Steve. So for me, boundaries actually are not a negative connotation. It's positive. And I've been learning this as I've been going through research and understanding boundaries and whether I'm good at setting them or not. I like to give you sort of a physical picture. Think about it like a property line, right? Like you have, either your apartment space with your dedicated space, or a house, and you have a property line around your house. For me, setting boundaries can help me to feel safe and protected, and give me the right amount of space so that I can get my needs met. And boundaries can be physical, they can be emotional, they can vary. You can set boundaries, self-boundaries, boundaries with friends, family. I think today what we will focus on are setting boundaries within relationships. What about you, Steve? What do you think of when you think, what is your definition of boundaries?
I think as soon as you mentioned the metaphor about the house, I think there's because you're right in terms of we can think of boundaries as having a negative connotation, or somebody who has very clear boundaries. I think there's a little bit of that.
You think of that as a cold person.
Yeah, they're cold, or maybe a bit prissy, or
yes.
You can do this, but you can't do this type of stuff. And it's not that at all. I think modern thinking more nowadays is, particularly with things like work-life balance and that kind of thing, that people are being a lot more clear about what they will and won't accept in terms of infringement on their time, behavior, money, the way that they're spoken to, and that kind of thing. And I think we're seeing that societally, right, where we're on a bit of a recorrection in terms of maybe going a bit far the other way of, and I hate the expression, but people using the term cancel culture, which I hate. But it does feel like we're on a bit of a course correction society-wise, where we are starting to go, it's not okay that you say or do that, right? It's not okay that this happens and you do this, right? Society-wise. So I think it's becoming a lot more, people societally we're doing that. And I think individually people are starting to do that maybe a little more. Doesn't mean we're good at it. Doesn't mean we're perfect at it. Doesn't mean we don't make mistakes. And it doesn't mean that we don't overreact. Yeah, I don't know. I think it seems a really important topic at the moment from our society point of view, culture point of view, but also very specifically, in our own lives.
Right. I love that perspective on boundaries. Are you interested in doing a little exercise, a little boundary work exercise?
No, I am.
Okay.
Always.
Let's do it. What we're going to do is walk Steve through a boundaries exercise called the universe. And Steve, what we're going to do is we're going to have you put pen to paper or chalk to chalkboard. And we are going to have you envision that you are your own planet, right? Within your own universe. And within your universe, you have spheres of influence, which are individuals in your life who are friends or family members. It could be anybody that comes to mind. And using yourself as the planet in the middle of your universe, I would like you to position those individuals who come to mind, the ones who really support you and lift you up, the ones who have earned the right to hear your stories, your confidential thoughts, your feelings. Those would be people you would position closest to you by writing their names down. And then people who are in your sphere of influence who might not be so supportive, people who you think about really needing to set boundaries for maintaining relationships with those people in the most healthy way possible. You're going to kind of write those individual names maybe further out in your solar system. Right. So let's take a pause here while Steve creates his universe.
Okay, so here is my universe.
Let's see it, Steve.
With me at the center.
Wow.
All right. So obviously lots of names you don't know. Yeah. So it was interesting because, honestly, I've got, like probably most men, I've got a very small sort of close group of friends. A lot of them you probably see are a lot of women, close friends.
Right.
A good mixture, I think, people I have not spoken to for a little while, but they're my, if I was in real need, or if I was getting married or something like that, they're the people who I would absolutely, they'd be sort of first few on the list because they're close and I've known them for so long.
Right.
Like some people I've known since I was 14, 15.
And yeah. my solar system looks the same. I mean, when I kind of have that circle of individuals around my planet.
Yeah.
And I think I have about the same number, right? Like 6 to 8 individuals. And even if you have 1 or 2, that's good. I know that Brene Brown calls those individuals that kind of surround your planet, your marble jar friends. And she calls them that because they're the individuals who have, kind of are there to support you and have earned the right to know your story. And I believe that the reference of the marble jar comes from elementary schools, where teachers will put marbles in a jar in a classroom when the group works well together. And then when they get a certain number of marbles in the jar, then they get to have a class party. So it's about watching individuals working together, supporting each other, and earning marbles.
Yeah.
What I find interesting, and I don't know if you noted this when you were going through the exercise, is that when I look at my sphere and I look at my closest people, my marble jar people, there's less work at setting boundaries with those individuals who are in my sphere. And then as I look out into the outer reaches of my universe, those individuals who are kind of on the outskirts are the ones where I want to circle their name and go, there's boundary work that I have to do there. That's why they're not here. They're here. Is there anybody in your universe who you would be interested in picking to further the exercise? Maybe dig down a little bit, someone who pops out on your list and you think to yourself, I have some boundary setting that I struggle with this particular relationship.
I'm going to choose my friend.
Okay, so I think that's a good one to pick because I'm familiar with that story. And I think we all have those friends that, are on the outer kind of perimeter of our universe. And they're not someone super close to us, but they're an individual who we like their personality and we enjoy spending time with them.
Yeah.
But we all could probably think of one person in our lives that we have a friendship with and we feel like it's an imbalanced friendship. It might be more, one direction. We feel like we're giving more and maybe like they're taking more, or you might be able to characterize it in a slightly different way.
I've just immediately thought of 2 more people exactly like that, actually. Okay, yeah, yes. I think that's an issue for me. All right, yeah.
Yeah, okay. I noticed for me, that is an issue with friends who exist in my perimeter.
Yeah.
That sometimes when I look at why I want to set those boundaries, it's because it is more of a one directional relationship and my needs aren't being met. We can get together and talk and it's almost all about them.
Yeah.
And very little about me. It's always assumed that I'm in a good place because I am, always grounded and the other person is always having, issues that need to be addressed or thought of, etc. So, Okay. So Steve, the first step is that we are going to define your reality. And what we want to do is we want to capture some data. I want you to think about this in terms of if you were sitting in a space and we actually had a video camera that we could use to record the reality, right? So it's not a story that you talk about in your head of what exists, but if I had a camera right now and it was pointed at an interaction that you were having, take us to where that place is and tell us a little bit about what's being recorded on camera. Okay, so what we're seeing on camera is a one-sided conversation.
Yeah, I'm seeing it in my mind. I'm playing it out in my mind, and it's sped up footage and seeing the clock go like that, right? So like 4 hours, and she's like that, and that's what it is. And me going,
okay, yep,
like that for 4 hours.
Okay. All right. This is good. So we've got the video recording. We've got the evidence. So what is the perception or thought? What is the story that you make up in your head as this is playing out on camera?
So 2 things.
What do you tell yourself?
Yeah, she's not interested in what I have to say or me. She's only interested in telling her story to someone. I could be anyone. So It's not anything. It could be literally the lady in the 7-Eleven store, right? It could be anyone. If she could corner someone, it could be absolutely anyone. So my presence makes no difference whatsoever.
Right. So your presence is not important.
No.
And would you also say that your life is not important because it's not a two-way conversation and there's no questions being asked?
Yeah. I think fundamentally no, but yeah, at the time, that's what it feels like. Yeah. Fundamentally, I know she loves me and cares about me and would do a lot for me. But in the moment, in terms of dealing with it, I find it very difficult to deal with because it feels like it's all above the shoulders bluster. And it's not really much coming from down here. And that's where I like to live. That's where I like to have conversations more from down here. I can do all that, obviously, but I like to have more grounded kind of conversations. And
grounded, authentic, focus. So what are the emotions that, if you had to list 2 or 3 emotions that occur when you're engaging in this interaction?
Yeah, for anger and frustration. I mean, I don't get angry, but it's frustrating because I feel like almost like shortness of breath. It's like someone's fire hosed at me. So I feel a little bit like that shock, almost like heightened sort of shock almost.
Right. And it also sounds like it's a lot of intense energy coming at you. Yeah. Like like you probably get done and you're exhausted. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right. It's like it's like a hose just kind of being like shot into your face for 4 hours straight. Yeah. So you're angry and you're frustrated. Those are the primary emotions. And then also it sounds like she sort of exhausts you. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because you have to just sort of stay focused and for 4 hours straight. Nobody would like to do that. So if we had to pick some needs that you have, where she talks about herself the whole time, doesn't really pay attention, is checked out on her phone, doesn't make you feel like she cares really much about what you have to say or what your day was like, what would be a few of the needs that you would identify? And within the deck that we are sending out to everybody, we have some needs that we've listed. But Steve, let me give you just a few. Mm-hmm. And you can maybe pick from this list as I'm throwing them out. Mm-hmm. Companionship, affection, communication, reliability, freedom, honesty. Do any of those resonate in what you might be missing?
I guess it's twofold. One is there's the kind of respect of my time. First of all, that's the initial thing, right? So it's the respect of that. I've also, because I'm polite, right? I don't like to go, look, I love talking. I've got to go to bed. I'll stay up for hours listening to her because I'm a nice guy, right? So I'll sit there for hours and hours. So you
don't have to do that. It's not impolite. It's not impolite.
No. Yeah. Okay. I think so. Being respectful of my time and my energy and my attention, I guess, that kind of thing. That's one thing. Okay. And I think some authenticity too, right? Because I'm happy to sit and listen and talk to whoever wants to do it for however long they want to do it. if it's a conversation and if it goes somewhere. But when it's simply it's all just, my drama, and I said to him and he said to me and I said to him and he said to me, I find it desperately uninteresting and unimportant, because it lacks authenticity in terms of her realizing what is wrong in that situation, what she's done wrong, or what she can do to solve the situation. It's all just bluster and repeating, well, I said to him and he said to me, and it's all kind of exaggerated. What I don't hear is, and I'm feeling like this, any authentic connection to the situation, and anything really connecting deeply. And that's what I think would make a difference to her.
And I think listening goes along with authenticity. So I'm hearing a couple things. Obviously, you'd like your time to be respected. And I'm not even hearing you say, I need to talk more about myself.
Oh, no.
You're happy talking with her about her things, but she needs to listen and she needs to have an authentic perspective, which gets to who she is as an individual.
Yeah.
And sometimes, we draw boundaries around individuals who we kind of look at and we don't necessarily trust, right? So for me, for example, I'm not going to say that I never gossip, because we all do. But if I'm standing after I drop off Olivia at school, and I'm standing and someone who I know, but I'm not super close to, but they're like a friend in the outer part of my universe, comes up and says, oh my gosh, did you hear about so-and-so? They're going through a terrible divorce, and this is what's happening, and can you believe it? My feelers go up on that person a little bit, because they've just shared a story with me that wasn't their story to tell. And if they're doing it to somebody else, then they might also do that with me. So they're not a marble jar friend to me, because I'm hearing a little bit of that about her as well, that she's lacking a little bit of the authenticity that you like to have in a friendship.
Yeah, and self-awareness too. And I know that not everyone has a high degree of self-awareness, but when I'm kind of going to her, this is the 5th time this has happened. Slow down. He's going to break your heart, and then 2 weeks later you'll be in the same position. I don't want you to get hurt.
It's interesting that you said, I feel like I can't make a difference with her, because the next step in this boundary setting process is for you to ask yourself the question, in this video that we're watching, do you have the power to create the result that you want if you were to be able to set a boundary with Haley without asking her or anyone else for help? Or do you need to make a request?
I think I'd need to make a request. Yeah.
And that request would be to her.
Yeah.
Right. So you're not totally powerless.
No.
In this situation.
I think she respects my opinion and stuff like that.
So you would make a request. You're not powerless. Is there, other than the request that you would ask of her, is there anything in the interaction, if the interaction was to happen again, that you would do differently? So you're gonna make a request, and we're gonna find out in a minute what that request is to her. And then we also want to think for a minute about, I'm asking her, I'm making a request of her.
I could be more authentic with her too. I can say, I'm desperately frustrated with you. I love you dearly, and I'm frustrated with you, and you make me sad. You don't make me sad. I feel sadness, and I feel protective over you. I think is some of the things I'd say to her.
Right. And what would happen if, after 3 hours of listening, you also said, I think you're repeating yourself at this point, and we've talked through all of this already, and I'm going to bed because I want to hit the gym tomorrow morning at 4 a.m. and I'm done talking.
I find that notion very difficult to think of.
Because what would happen? What would happen if you did?
I don't know. I don't know. I think that the fear is that she'd think I was rude, or she would think that I didn't care. Yeah. So she'd think I didn't care or think I was rude.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And with graciousness being one of my prime values, that feels like it's a very tricky and tough thing for me to do.
So Steve, let's pause here and do a quick recap.
Mm-hmm.
So we started with your universe, and we picked somebody on sort of the outskirts of your universe, a friend, where you want to set a boundary.
Yeah.
And we went over what the scenario looks like on camera.
Mm-hmm.
And then we talked about the story that you tell yourself in your head when you feel like your time is not being respected and you're sort of being ignored, and your feedback isn't valued. Yeah. And we talked about what emotions that brings up in you. And we talked about some of the needs that you would have if you wanted to set a boundary and improve this relationship that you have with your friend. So now we're at the point where you're thinking about making the ask.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the words that we can use when we are thinking about how to design the ask is when you, factual vocabulary about what we see on the camera, I feel, emotions, I would like for you to, tangible actions. Can you do that? Is how you wrap up the ask. So if you were to frame an ask, what would it sound like?
Wow. Okay.
It's so uncomfortable, isn't it?
It is. It does feel.
It's really. I mean, this boundary stuff it's incredibly simple.
Yeah.
Because we're not diving into huge complexities, but just the thought of having to make an ask like that can really bring up some very uncomfortable feelings.
Well, it brings up the voice in your head, right, that says she's going to think this, it's going to, all of that imagination storytelling stuff, right? Yep. All right, here goes. So when you talk about yourself for long extended periods of time, I feel that you're not interested in me, my thoughts, my opinions, or my reflections on what you've said. What I'd like is for you to occasionally ask me my opinion about what you should do and really consider it. Because when I've done that in the past, you've said, yeah, I've done that, or I've thought that, which I don't think you have, because you wouldn't be repeating the patterns of behavior you're repeating. So can you do that?
Wow. That is good. And really powerful. Wow. How does that feel?
Do you know what's important is the bit at the end is the can you do that? Mm-hmm.
Right.
Because
and
it's
listening
non-judgmental.
very carefully, right?
Yeah.
Listening to, because you've asked for more than one thing, right? Yeah. You've asked for respect of your time. You've asked for a two-way conversation, and you've asked for her to consider your opinions in an authentic way. I think she might be able to do a few of those, but not all of them.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that makes the difference is the important part of it, I noticed, is the first part, which is describing the behavior. Not you're so, because what happens when we're in emotional, when we're in that moment with people, you're always talking about yourself. You're so self-obsessed and you're attacking the person and not addressing the specifics of the behavior. So me saying, when will you talk a lot about yourself for extended periods of time? That's a behavior, right?
Right. There's no judgment. It's what you see on the video camera, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's why we're using that analogy, because it's not what you think in your head is different from what we're actually seeing.
Yeah. And I think sometimes things like, I'm not with anyone. I'm not, romantically involved with anyone, but I know this is when those little things build up around, you know, taking the laundry out of the washing machine, or taking the stuff out of the dishwasher, or taking the trash out. It's trash day tomorrow, and you always wait to or whatever. It's that stuff that builds up and builds up and builds up that we don't talk about for 6 months, 12 months, 10 years, and then it goes kaboom, and it all comes out, rather than the first few times it happens, go, look, I really want you to take the trash out, because it's very stressful when I know that the trash is coming, garbage guys come on Wednesday around 8 a.m. and a few times you've missed it, and I have to then, please do that, you know, rather than building it up. And you are so this, and this, because of all that, it kind of builds up, you know, but setting those boundaries earlier on up front. And I think, you know, a lot of people have it around work, which we'll kind of come on to a little bit, but it's just that letting it go, sometimes not letting it go, is the real difficulty, because then it's like, I've let that person get away with it 50 times. Right. And I've mentioned it twice. So I know it's really difficult. Yeah. So at work, this can be maybe a little bit more tricky because there's politics involved, right? Particularly if it's a boundary with a boss. If we feel like we are obliged to carry out certain things, do certain things, you know, be involved in social activities. One of the things that stresses people out, I have noticed, particularly people who have families, is being expected to be part of the social network at work. So it's like, oh, we're all having this thing outside of work later on. Everyone's either going for drinks or whatever it is. And then it's always consistent that people, probably you've got other things to do, better things to do than hang around with people that they've spent all day with. Right. That tend to stress out about that. And then they feel like their career is impeded in some way because they're not being part of that scene. And that's where promotions get, you know, decided and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, and it's desperately unfair, you know, and also, you know, being the person who gets stuff dumped on them, you know, gets stuff, and it becomes a truism, and it becomes Carrie will get it done, you know, Carrie will be the one who pulls it out. She'll pull the hours, you know, and she'll work through the night to get it done. It's like, I will, but it seems like I'm doing it all the time, and I'd rather freaking not have to do it like that, you know. So that's a much trickier thing to do. And again, I think one of the things is going back to that format that you've highlighted, which is, so when you give me work at the 11th hour, it feels very stressful because I want to do a really good job. And I don't think I'm able to do a good job to my high standards when you're giving it to me in the 11th hour. What I'd like is for you to give me things with much more notice when it's possible. Can you do that for me? Because I want to do a really good job. You know, it's almost like accentuate the positive side.
I like that a lot. And so the example that you gave is that you are making an ask, but there's also a tell there, right? And the tell is, I want to do a really good job.
Yeah.
I want to do my best work for you. Here's the thing I need so that I can do that.
Yeah. And on the social side of things,
in a way, the ask is a bit of an art, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think on the social side of things, and I think the thing is as well, is I was going to say you sell it, but I think selling it's the right way. Maybe it's the right way, but anyway, you sell it from a position of strength, from a position of what's really important to you, and from a positive perspective. Not, you're always dumping stuff on me and it stresses me out. That's not a great way, because it makes the other person wrong, right? If I'm saying to you, you always do this, it's a bit like, you know, because I don't know about you, but occasionally I was told when I was a kid, you've ruined everything. Don't know if you've ever done that. Did you ever hear that growing up? I certainly heard that a lot. Look at this, you've ruined everything because of one transgression I might have done. But anyway, that's the thing, you know, and in relationships, you always do that, you know, that kind of very holistic sort of hyperbolic.
Well, it's really just, it's what's the right word? I want to say ultimatum, but that's not it, but it's just it's a gross exaggeration.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And
you always do that. And that's a bit like that, right? So in
or you never So I guess you
Yeah,
want to
yeah.
you want to avoid you never, you always.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly. Yeah. That
because I think
you never support me. You never
people stop
back me up.
people stop listening.
Yeah.
So Steve, do you have any specific advice for our community in terms of how they make the ask? And by that, I mean the environment in which they would do so, or the modalities that they would use to be successful.
Um, I think absolutely face to face, you know, as much as possible, or at the very least, you know, in this kind of way, this mode, you know, via Zoom or FaceTime or whatever. Because you can, you know, if I ask you something on text, hey, well, can you please in future, and you type back, sure. There's so much I can read into that. I can read that into sure, or sure. You know, lots of different ways you can read into that. So I need the visual feedback from you. I need to see behind your eyes, do you mean that? Right? If I say to you, can you make sure that you do that? And you go, sure. You know, and that you flip it off. I go, I know I don't get it. I don't get it in here. But if I can see that visual cue, and if I can see behind your eyes and I know that you're going to do it, then I feel a lot firmer. I feel a lot more confident. I don't have to feel like I need to reaffirm. But if you brush me off, I go, hang on a minute. Are you sure you're going to do that? And I'll do that with the kids. You know, it's like when you know, probably do it with Olivia. Have you got your stuff? Yeah. No. Have you got, tell me properly, have you got the homework book or the budget? Let me see it. No, I've got it. I packed it. Are you sure? You know, you can do that. And I think it's applying that. Do it face to face. Do it in an environment away from people. Don't do it in front of people. Have that more of that intimacy, because what you don't want then is the person, particularly if they're in a higher status, either higher status in terms of their job role or higher status in terms of socially, that they can mug you off, right? And go, you know, oh, no, it needs to be like that, all that kind of stuff. So one-to-one intimacy, you know, you really get behind the eyes, use a soft tone of voice too, which is, I'd really like it if you could do this, because it makes me frustrated and I really want to do a good job. Always give that positive side to it too, which is, I want to do a good job and I don't feel I'm able to do it. Or it's one of my most important values, you know, is respect. And I don't feel personally you respect my time. That's how it makes me feel.
Right.
I'm sure that's not your intention, but that's how it makes me feel.
Right.
Can you make sure you turn up on time? Great, thank you. And then say thank you, you know, it's that.
Right.
But it's, look, it's adult to adult. You're not trying to demean them. You're not talking up to them, right? Like, oh, please, can you do this for me, please? But it's an adult to an adult conversation. You're in the eyes and it's coming from the heart. And I think that's a very difficult, when someone communicates with you like that, it's a very difficult proposition to refuse.
Right. Oh, I love that.
Fancy a bit of dessert?
Yes, let's move on. Okay.
All right. So, I mean, dessert, really, do the exercise and give us feedback on Patreon on the community page. Send us a message through Patreon too, and Carrie will respond, because I never get to them. You always get to them before me.
Well, because I get notified when someone post something, so
because you're the boss. So the only other thing that I've got, I guess, is I've got a joke for you. Do you want to hear a joke?
Yes, that's perfect for dessert. I either want a joke or I want tortilla chips.
Okay.
Choose.
All right, well, we'll give you something sweet instead of savory then.
Okay.
This is Daisy's favorite joke.
Okay.
She makes me tell her this all the time. She goes, do the joke. And I go, oh, you've heard it. It's not funny, Joanne, but I like the way you do it. So here we go.
Okay.
And every time I do it for her, I add a little bit more. Anyway, so here we go. So there's this little polar bear, and he's hanging out with his polar bear family, and he's thinking to himself, and he goes over, he goes and speaks to his dad, and he says, "Dad," and the dad goes, "Yeah." He says, "Can I ask you a question?" He said, "Yeah, of course you can." He said, "Am I a polar bear?" And he went, "Of course you're a polar bear. I mean, I'm a polar bear. Your mum's a polar bear. Your granddad's a polar bear. Yeah, you're a polar bear. Of course you are." And he goes, "Okay," and then wanders off, right? A few minutes later, he goes and sees his mum and says, "Mum, am I a polar bear?" She went, What? What kind of question? Yeah, of course you're a polar bear. I'm a polar bear. Your dad's a polar bear. Your granddad's a polar bear. Of course, you're a polar bear. He goes, okay. Goes off and sees granddad. Granddad. And he says, oh, yes. So can I ask you a question? He went, oh, of course you can. Am I a polar bear? And he said, yeah, obviously. I'm a polar bear. Your mum's a polar bear. Your dad's a polar bear. You're a polar bear. But why are you asking? And he goes, because I'm freezing. That's it. Banquet for your body. No, it's not. It's meze for the mind, banquet for the body, and soup for your soul here on
Steve and Carrie's Holistic Buffet. Thank you for joining us today. We hope to see you back here soon. That was so good. It's the way you tell it that makes it so good.